Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 36th International Documentary Film Festival, the second DOK.fest, Munich at home due to pandemic conditions. And very welcome to the DOK.forum, which is the industry platform of the DOK.fest. And here within this industry platform, we have a series of events with panel talks, discussions, a masterclass, and we have questions to editors. And this look into the post-production of documentary film making, we call rearranging reality, because this is what it basically is, rearranging things to tell a story. We are very proud to have Adobe as our sponsor, and they made possible to have first time ever on this festival an DOK.edit Award presented by Adobe, an award to honor the art of editing. And this the prize money is 5,000 euros, and there are 3 films which are nominated and for this. And it's Instruction for Survival, and it's the President and NEMESIS. And today we have a wonderful talk to the editors of NEMESIS, and we have a kind of behind the scenes look how this film was edited. And I think some of you might not have seen this film, and therefore we want to roll the trailer first.
Mein Vorsatz fürs neue Jahr? Ich werde es nicht zulassen, dass meine Vergangenheit ausgelöscht wird. Was verbirgt sich wohl in dieser Kupferbox? Es ist eine Zeitkapsel, um ausgewählte Dinge an zukünftige Generationen weiterzugeben. Die Justizdirektorin legte einen Spiegel hinein mit der Bemerkung, wer Macht hat, ist aufgefordert, sich immer wieder im Spiegel zu überprüfen. Ich habe 5 Jahre in Schweizer Gefängnissen zugebracht. Aber ich hätte nicht gedacht, dass sich die Schweiz so einengen kann in dieser kurzen Zeit. Ihr Schweizer, ihr spinnt doch alle. Schon heute sind mehr als 70% der Gefängnisinsassen Ausländer, Tendenz steigend. Um im Gefängnis zu landen, muss man was falsch gemacht haben, oder?
So today with us are the director, editor, and the editor of this film, Nemesis. It's first of all, Thomas Imbach. He's an independent filmmaker based in Zurich, Switzerland. All of his films has been released in cinemas, won numerous awards, and the film Nemesis was premiered at International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam and won the prize for best cinematography. So there's already one prize which this film won. And then we have David Charap, a UK-based editor, and he's working both for television and feature film, fictions and non-fictions. And he's working mostly in UK and Czech Republic, and he won the Czech Line Award for Best Editing, and other films won prizes at Sundance Film Festival. So a warm welcome to you, the editors, Thomas and David. And the best thing about this prize is that we are not only have the possibility to have a look behind the scenes of editing a film, a documentary, but also having a glimpse of a jury decision in the making, because we have our wonderful jury with us today, and they will have those questions to the editors, which then probably in the end will change their decision about who gets the honor of getting this wonderful DOK.edit Award presented by Adobe. So first of all, we have with us Rûken Tekes, and she's born in Turkey. She worked as a human rights expert for the UN and as a lecturer for several years. And since 2015, she is a film producer and started working as film director. And Eta was her first feature-length documentary film, which premiered in Nyon and was presented at DOK.fest last year and won several prizes. She's a member of the European Film Academy. Very warm welcome to you, Rûken, once again. Then we have Peter Indergand, and he's born in Switzerland, attended AFI, American Film Institute in Los Angeles, and he shot like more than 50 fiction and documentary films. First, mostly fiction films, then turning more to the documentary film industry. And he teaches also at university and is a member of the European Film Academy too. Welcome, PJ. And Mary came, we had an introduction to Mary where we forgot some things, and then, so this time the introduction is a little bit longer than normally. She's born in Hong Kong, lived in Canada, and now is living in Paris. And for more than 25 years, she worked together with French New Wave director Eric Romer as an editor and sometimes obviously co-composer. And in the last 15 years, she worked with fiction and documentary film makers over several continents, also as associate producer and script advisor. And she's also directing herself. She was nominated for Golden Horse, Independent Eye, and other awards, and teaches in institutions China, Australia, and elsewhere. She is a member of the American Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science, and this is something special, she was named Chevalier in the French Order of Arts and Letters. So welcome, Mary. So we have some heavyweights on the jury side and some heavyweights on the other side. And I'm really looking forward to this talk to get to know something about the editing. And of course, there's the elephant in the room, and I want to address it first. So this is my first question. Sorry to the judges if I steal this question to you. So my question to you both is at the beginning, how did you pull that up? How did you work together as two editors?
Oh, that's easy. No, I mean, editing is always a combination of working by yourself and working with somebody else. It's a team game ultimately. So this was unusual because Thomas did most of the hard work and then just invited me in to talk about it, really. I mean, he had the machine in his place and would present cuts. It's slightly perverse, the director presenting a cut to the editor. But we would then discuss and talk, and sometimes we would fight over the mouse. But I mean, I guess there's a more serious answer to your question, which is, I think the relationship between editors and directors is becoming more intimate. It's less hierarchical. Not just with Thomas, but I think in general. Most directors will be more familiar with editing than they were in the past. And so it's less of a, you do this and I'll do that. It's more of a teamwork. So what's unusual is to do that in 2 different countries, and so there'd be so little time when one's together in a room. But hey, the whole world has got used to working in your bedrooms, you know. We were just a little ahead of the curve. Thomas,
you're still muted.
Sing to us.
So my egg monologue was mute. I'm sorry, because when I started talking about, I said it all started with eggs in the morning. You couldn't hear that, so sorry.
Oh.
That's why nobody reacted. I thought, what did I say? Okay, but what David was telling you is wonderful. Let me give you some details. We worked on other films before, and he was like knowing my project, filming out of my window. So one day he texted me, "I'm thinking about your prison. What's going on with your prison?" And I was just about to start editing and preparing, and I said, "So come over, let's have a look at it." So the collaboration started quite naturally, organic, and yeah, we met over like 9 months for like 7 or 8 long weekends. That was basically our collaboration. And as David described it, it was more of a teamwork, or for me, it was like a sparring partner. And I was happy to have like a strong sparring partner for this. And it was good having breaks in between. And so the film could evolve in this time we did other stuff.
But it's, I mean...
Thank you very much. So David, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so it doesn't sound too straightforward. I mean, this sounds lovely. You spend a long weekend, you go to an Italian restaurant, you talk about...
Do some editing.
Weather, but I mean, it's crazy. It was crazy, intense periods, but in fact, very efficient. You know, most feature documentary edits, they take a long time, and there's a lot of thinking time, and it stretches out, and somehow you forget what you were worried about last time. Here, the edit itself took place over a long period, but when we were actually in the same room together, it was, you know, morning till night. The egg Thomas was talking about was I insisted on having breakfast together. So we had forlorn eggs, I think that they're called in German, poached eggs. No, but in a way, you can see, I hope, on the screen, it's the sort of film where you have to let go of your preconceptions, and it's a world, you know, it's a whole immersion, for better or worse, you know. And I think a conventional edit where you'd spend a lot of time and you'd prepare it and then you'd refine it and backwards and forwards, it would never sustain this sort of material. You know, we would have been at each other's throats within months. But this way, it was somehow an organic experience.
But it was also important when you said about the changing habit of editing nowadays. And of course, now after the pandemic, you would not be able to come over this every third weekend or whatever. Yeah. But I really was insisting having like the sessions together, because we already at the time knew you could do this via Zoom or whatever you could. We were already knowing these techniques, but it was very crucial that we came to Zurich and that we have had those very intense meetings over 3 or 4 days, and then
and that was to the airport, you know.
It was also a fact of your other jobs. You had a lot of other jobs. Let's be honest. And I had some other jobs as well. So actually, probably it was also due to the film was being made over 7 years, so the editing could not be made in one row. It needed several waves, and And there was also like sound and music that had to be done in parallel. So yeah, it felt organic, and I was very happy I could convince him every new visit in Zurich. And yeah.
At what point did you, excuse me, at what point did you know what this film was to be about? Was it from the start or during the shooting of the film, or did it also, when you talk about the story being like a world, you constructed this world also in the editing? So you...
Not really, because I started
more precise in what you wanted to say, or was it just to shape it in the way you knew before what you wanted to tell?
In the edit, I learned with David how to tell it, how to narrate it, and what material we need. But you know, I started this film only for one reason, only because of the collapsing of those roofs. That was my motivation, because I did another film out of my window, and I never thought I will do a next one. So I knew about the prison project, and of course it was for me, I felt to have the duty to witness this process from the collapsing train station to the prison. That was, I felt obliged to do it. And while I was filming, I was also starting to do research for my future neighbors. And then also I was working on another film with Lisa, and she was visiting those refugees awaiting deportation in the airport prison. And she came back with testimonials, and I collected those material. But at an early stage, I also had the idea to have some politicians in the film, voices of politicians. I had much more voices, you know, and it was some work also to get around the political process, because the political process is very complicated, and even Zurich people would not understand what really was happening, because there was another side, and it was like Bauernopfer. What's the English word?
I don't know.
You don't know. Nobody knows, but the public knows. Yeah.
No.
So
but we look it up.
I knew a lot about what I want to tell, but to really reduce it to the max, that was really then in these long weekends with David that we found what we really need to.
Peter, can I be totally honest with you about when does this world make sense?
It's just between us anyway.
No, but I know this will sound a bit pretentious, all right? But it's only now. It's only now that I understand what this film, what it means to me. You know, editing is a very pragmatic business. You know, you're given some material and you try to make sense of it, and you try to make it compelling, and you try to cut out the boring bits. I mean, you know, it's a job. But what is it you're making? What is the meaning that you're creating? You think you know. You think you, and in most films, you know, there's years of scripts and proposals and teasers and trailers, and can we have money to do it like this? And yes, it will definitely tick this box, and so on. And so you know, the filmmaking is more of a mechanical process. You know what it has to do, and you do it. This is, I mean, just off the page. It's completely the opposite of that. As Thomas says, something interesting is happening outside his house. He has a fancy camera. He has some leftover film. Let's film that. And then ideas start flowing. Maybe this reminds me of this or whatever. And 7 years later, a movie pops out, you know? But it's only now when I was trying to write a synopsis of the film for a website. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's okay, the station and prison, blah. And then I realized that somehow the story moves through these images from the past, you know, back to the riots of the Italian workers building this once great station that encapsulated Zurich or whatever. It moves to the present, this empty landscape, this weird street food festival. and it moves to this metaphorical image of the future, not just for Zurich, but for all of us in Europe and perhaps everywhere, with asylum seekers and security. And suddenly that's it. Past, present, and future. I never, never, never had that insight when making the film. It's only now. And for me, I mean, it's a real privilege to make a film that is alive. You know, it's alive until it goes in, goes into the DVD box or the file. You know, normally films are alive when you dream about them, when you can't sleep, and then by the time you've got the funding, they're already half dead, right? This is the opposite.
Yeah, I think I know exactly what you mean.
Yes, me too.
It has happened to me before that I thought I perfectly understand the film I'm working on. It's very obvious what we want to tell, and maybe even a couple of years later, when I had to rewatch the film because of some screening, I realized that it was telling more than just what we had intended. And if this happens to you, it's great.
It's a joy. It's a real joy.
But I want to add to this question to follow the same line. I understand from the David part, but I just want to confirm from the Thomas side. So when were you really, as I understand, throughout the process, you were aware what you were doing actually, but it was like pieces by pieces, things were coming and adding to the thing that you were working, I guess. But when was that really you had the idea before entering to the editing? Maybe while you were still shooting, you had the idea of, okay, this is going to be a film of such and such, or maybe it was just during the editing. So when did you have the idea of how are you going to share the story? What forum? How are you going to use all this hundreds of hours? I don't know how many hours you have.
It's not hundreds of hours, it's 35. So I had to be very
restricted. That's very good.
I could not shoot whatever, you know.
Very good.
So that helped a lot. Yeah. What David was telling, I completely confirm, and I'm making films like that because I'm only collecting material to organize in a most interesting way. So a film will have to live in the head of the spectator and with the public. For me, that's very natural because I always have very different reactions on my films. People make up their own films when they looking at one of them. And for me, that's very normal in a way. So, and of course I knew a lot, but at the same time, I didn't know anything because when I start a film, I start with the whole world. And as I told you, I wanted to tell everything, what was connected to this transformation from the station to the prison. And a lot of decisions I took in camera, you know, all the slow-mo and speed ups I did in camera. And I also had, like, during the years, I started to have like a script in my head, what I'm interested in, what I'm looking for, what I missed the last time. So, but I was not really thinking about how I will edit this. I knew this is going to be, as David was talking about, past, present, future. That was obvious. And for me, it was very crucial to stop when the raw building was finished. I know now we have to stop because I don't need a fancy, perfect prison with nice facades. I prefer it to have it as a ruin. And things like that were like decisions I took during the shoot. But then in the editing, it's just to find out, to really get rid of what you don't need, and to learn to understand the material, that it works without knowing so much background, you know, because that was And therefore I was happy to work with David because he didn't know anything, you know, because he was coming from the island and he didn't know about Swiss politics and everything. So that was for me a good test public to what the hell are we talking about here? So, and for that was very creative.
Can I just add a little bit on that? In terms of when you were shooting in the beginning, the collapsing of the building, of the station, you knew that there was going to be a prison, but did you know what the prison was for?
Sure. Yeah.
For the, yeah. So, and so eventually when Lisa added on, I mean, had the idea of going to have those stories, that was...
But she didn't go for the film, you know, she did that as a personal engagement. What's that?
Right. Maybe.
Yeah. She did that for herself, you know, that was her like political work. So,
right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and it's sort of, things just gelled together.
Yeah. She then started collecting it and started writing it down, and even because when she did that, I was not sure whether I will use all the voices of those refugees. And at the end, I only had text because some of them were not anymore in Switzerland. So, and then we decided, I had to have one voice, and instead of 100 voices, let's reduce it to one.
And when you start to work with David, at what stage were you in terms of editing?
I was preparing the edit. I can show you some, you know, when I start an edit, I don't have a lot of writing. I start with pictures. I first start building up a visual library to have a visual overview on the raw material.
Mm-hmm. Let's see it.
Sorry?
Let's see it. Show us.
Let us see it.
Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah. I do stuff like that, you know. I have here all different like criterias, and I have all the material in picture.
Okay.
It's hard to see. It's hard to see on video, but honestly, this is the makings of a great installation. I've seen.
No, but I started this in the 90s when there were no computers to edit. You know, my first films I edited on VHS with 100 cuts and I started this on an early stage because it helps me to destroy the chronology of the raw material and to build up something new. So that's a technique I quite often use, but I also did like the photo books. Here the material is in chronology of the shoot, you know, so there is all the lab reels. So so I had like two physical stuff to work with the material, because I always try to not to get rid of the computer, but to have different stuff than only the computer. Because at the early stage, when I was in the 90s, I started filming with Hi8 and 35. And at that stage, I still worked with Steenbeck to bring it all together and so I'm a child of this transformation from analog to, I never could edit a film 100% analog. It would be too complicated. But I always used it until 2000 as a final, because 1 second is like that. So I'm still having these materials to have something in my hand.
Can I add something? Can I add a question exactly to this process of working? Because I noticed that the film consists of several layers. It's obvious, but it's done in a very interesting way, which I also like a lot. I have to admit, it's not just the pictures that you just showed. It's also the the sound design, it's the music, it's the narration. How did you go about to add these layers and these elements? You started out with kind of raw pictures, probably no sound at all. And then how did you continue from there to add the other elements?
When David came in, we started to work on an early stage with the text, yeah. And he even was recording it, the first version, yeah, with his English voice. And then, so we tried out on an early stage. And then I had like a CD from some musicians I knew, and we had some music. And I already had recorded songs 2014 or 15. I was with the musician from the earlier film I did, Out of This Window, and I knew about some songs I want to include that talked to this transformation about a train station to prison. And I had those ideas, but then we started to work with this material in the edit, yeah. And I recorded again the music, both the songs and the it's not jazz music, but the other music. And with Peter Brecker, I worked with him since 1990. So we worked together since quite a while. And he was looking forward to this film because he knew this is going to be his film, you know, and he knew that I will not bring sound because I had some sound, some Atmos sound, but it's too far away. It doesn't really work. And I didn't have the time to work as closely with sound as with image. So, but for me, it was very crucial to use sound as to let us see what we want in every shot. So, so he started on an early stage as well, and we got some material and we tried this out, and David was even going to his studio also to record some of the voices. So some of the voices you're hearing are also David's voices. The other voices are Peter's. So actually it's only two people are talking in the film.
But I think it's worth pulling out one important aspect of this process. You know, if you look outside the window behind Thomas now, you will see the building site. You know, so the reality is always there. And frankly, to watch a 2-hour movie about a building site is as tedious as it sounds. You know, reality is not interesting enough until it's transformed in our process. So on the one hand, it was it's a nightmare being confronted with all of this totally silent footage, but it's also quite a liberation because it makes you think, well, what is interesting here? What would you want to hear? What would make it tell the story that we're interested in? And, Thomas's props, if you like, with the photos and having something physical to hold on to, for me, it's important to have something to keep you in the metaphor. You know, so to keep the film from ever just sinking into an observational documentary. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot to be said for observational documentaries, but here, the film only was in the air if we kept it as a parable, and all of the elements we mentioned, music, voiceover, sound effects in particular, that they were deployed to keep the viewer interpreting. You know, there's nothing makes sense in this movie unless you think about it. So right from the beginning, as soon as there's that apple that blows across the pavement, you're in a metaphorical movie, and that for me is where editing starts fizzing. It's exciting rather than just telling the story. Some of it, we're stuck. If a building's getting bigger, you're stuck with chronology. You can't I mean, there are a few bits where we slightly cheat, but basically the building gets bigger. You know, you just cut out the boring bits. That's it.
But this also starts on the earlier phase. Sorry to interrupt, but
no.
It was also not a problem, but like a challenge, because from my point of view, you never really see the fucking prison. You know, we only see like the front of the police station. The prison is behind. We don't see it. It is the prison. I show it to you, but to be honest, I cannot. The whole thing is much bigger than in the film, and I always thought, what can I do to? The only way out would have been to leave the room, but that was my premise, because already in the other film, Days Done, I did some footage out of my atelier, and I could not use it because it's so captivating to have this one shot. And I knew it's really, this is the challenge, to build it from the one window. And I was always tempted to leave, to go out, to have another angle, because it gets so much bigger and so much more frightening, but I could not. So we had to do it with our very limited means.
I have a question to David. Sorry.
Wait a second, because we're in a Zoom webinar, so the audience could participate and send in some comments or questions. So if you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat. And with me is Anna over from the DOK.forum team. And I saw there are some comments coming up.
Yes, there's one comment and one question attached to it. So the film seems so extraordinarily well composed. How closely was David bound to Thomas' intentions?
How closely were you bound to my intentions?
Sounds great. Sounds slightly kinky.
And I'll add to it. I want to add to it because it was a very similar question. I want to know the areas that you had to fight with Thomas, like which were the areas that you had to convince him maybe to go the other way, or was there any issues that you disagreed, and did you solve them?
Oh, sure. I mean, you know, there's some editors who press the buttons and do what you tell them, and you know, they have a better night's sleep than I do. No, I think Thomas and I are bound to each other's obsessiveness. You know, we share that there's no magic answer here for there's a perfect film and you just pick it out and there it is. You know that it's trial and error, and it's sort of delicate here because the material always has a capacity to be inert. So I like to think we were bound in intention, yes, in mood and in seriousness of pursuit, but no, we would argue over every frame. I mean, not for the sake of argument, but you know, how many times does that yellow truck have to go around dumping the soil before it becomes just because you have it, you know, because you have the option to say, hey, I filmed it 50 times. How many times, how much and how little do you want to know of Thomas, the filmmaker's character in the voiceover? You know, how many refugees do you want to hear? You know, these were things that we didn't argue about them, but we explored differing possibilities, you know? And because the material is so precious, you know, it's filmed on 35mm, it's expensive, but also complicated to film. There's a lot more value in it than a normal, you know, hours and hours of video. So Thomas is defending the material. You know, he knows why he filmed it. He knows what he hopes it does. And I'm more skeptical. Why are we adding this? You know, the film's already 4 hours long. You know, everyone's asleep by now. How are we going to keep it going? But I think that's when you lose the ego, that's the constructive challenge that any editor must be giving the director. You know,
that's a wonderful answer. Thank you very much. But I think there's one more. No, I missed that. So sorry for that. Rûken, you wanted to add something.
I already asked.
It's okay.
Yeah.
One thing I can add, you know, David explained it quite, as it is. And I also was, some minutes ago, of course, when I'm working with a sparring partner, I'm not wanting somebody to just be silent or do whatever I'm telling him, because then I could do it on my own. It's really a conversation. But one thing is, you know, I have some specific ideas about editing that are, some of these ideas is that I always go by, the film has to tell me how we have to edit it. And of course, ideas like that is for somebody like David, who works on a lot of different films, it's challenging. And we come from very different backgrounds. And what is refreshing is that we both accept the premises of our own backgrounds. And of course, I know that it's delicate to have a more than 2-hour movie on one window, of course. And that what made it very refreshing for me to go down all this. It's hard to say. It's because then you say it's a fight. It's really like you beat it out of the film, or you. It's.
May I jump in? Just with a small chat beforehand, and Thomas said something really, which was astounding to me, and he said the film has to edit itself. So this is quite interesting for a discussion of editors. So could you explain what you meant by that? The film has to edit.
I don't believe in editing as a process where you know, some editors say you can do this or this or this. I say you only can do this. There is no alternative. In my film, I only look for the one way you have to edit it. There is you cannot go this or this way. You have to work until you find the one and only way. That's my conviction. And I learned it over the years. And of course, David knows that, and he plays with it, and he brings up as a good devil all kind of different arguments to shape my prejudices and of course this but let's leave it like that. I mean, it's what it is. It's the film edits itself. I do not believe in, because I do not believe in editing as a decor after, you know, you have some raw material and with nice editing, you make it look great. I don't believe in that. The good editing is that lets the material talk, you know, in the best possible way. That it was, of course, you can, it's just my way of thinking.
I mean, I think it's worth savoring that in the material that we had, there's not so much choice. I mean, there's lots of material, but it's not like, you know, I preferred the wide shot. What about the close up? Let's go to the other angle. What about the top shot? I mean, it's a question of what are we feeling at this stage in the story? What is the next aspect? Where are we trying to go to? And Thomas will have to accept some of the edits are imposed. I mean, there's no reason why the culmination of the street food festival, which ends with the Zurich in the rain, and we see all the lights, and there's this crazy speeded up rodeo, and then there's a lightning strike, and we cut to power generators in this empty site, and the street food festival has vanished, and suddenly there's been a electric problem on the building site, and maybe there's some saboteurs, and suddenly security forces are around. Now, there was lots of different material that had happened between those elements being shot, but somehow putting them together makes coherent sense. I don't think it's a particularly profound edit, but it's exciting. You're in this crazy world of the rodeos, everything's speeded up and blurred, and it's slightly grotesque. And then it's like the gods are intervening, and it takes, it's actually quite a disturbing twist. Suddenly you have workers having their pre-COVID swabs, they're having their DNA inspected. And the film moves into a different level. That for me is an imposed edit. We made that material.
I don't want to disappoint you, David, but this edit actually perfectly tell the story how I lived this street food festival, because when the street food festival happened, I did not know that this is going to happen, and I was so surprised, and I was preparing another shoot, and I didn't have the time, but I had to include it because it was so surrealistic. All of a sudden, they start doing all these funny games, and the swimming pool and the rodeo. So, and also in the decision to include this street food festival in the film, this is already, this choice made it, of course, we needed cuts, just David explained to us, we needed those cuts to have this, to include the street food festival in this universe, because it was so completely from a different context that it was refreshing. But I mean, of course, David did not live those 7 years, and he, of course, and this is very refreshing and important, because sometimes you make up your own stories, and of course it's crucial to have somebody that wakes you up sometimes.
Rûken.
Sorry.
Rûken,
first,
and then Mary.
Okay. No, Rûken first.
Okay, fine. Since we're talking about footages, I was wondering if you decided while you were doing the edit that you needed some extra footages on certain parts, and you went and reshot, or you shot new things, or you use your own archive and include them in the film. Is there any
verboten?
Huh?
Verboten.
No, you're wrong. I mean, the final fireworks we shot after the main edit.
But but they're right at the end. I mean, the point is, there was filming going. I mean, obviously we're editing, and then anytime there'd be an interesting sound outside, one of us would run to the window and see, what's happening. Where are our actors? Where's our characters? So there was certainly filming going on during the editing process. The fox, I think, was a late comer. There are two foxes in the film. One of them is one of the rare characters who is shot out of sequence. Okay. So in fact, the building is much more advanced, but you can't see it for where the summer fox appears. But it's not a world where you could film pickups, even if you really wanted to. And that's sort of, I think that would be difficult for us to have accommodated,
But also the scene where the containers are burning, this scene was happening I think in October or something. We were quite advanced already, and I only shot it because I knew, of course, it will help me to reinforce the scene with the ambulance. And of course, I was sad that not the building was burning, only the containers. Because I always was like waiting for a fire in the building, but at least I had a fire in the containers.
Mary had a question.
Yes, actually, first I wanted to say that the thing about the material edits itself, I think I'm totally with you there. Another thing is that what about time? I mean, the perspective of time, because you edited also throughout a certain amount of time. Did you have a sort of shift of importance or focus or things that you wanted to do that changed after you left it for several weeks or several months or whatever?
I think the fact that we were stop-starting in terms of the editing process, we'd always joke about, I would leave Thomas some homework. You know, there would be sequences that we hadn't resolved, or a voiceover that a theme that we wanted to develop. And it was quite helpful to, Thomas then had to go and do that. But then by the time I came back, we'd forgotten what the big deal was. But we could see the value of what was done. And, you know, sometimes it was a step backwards and sometimes it was steps forward. But
to be honest, for me, it was a bit different because I was always like in the flow. And then always David was coming in and destroying my big costume. And of course, that was the dynamic. You know, he was coming from a completely different world and bringing it. And but that was part of the game. And I really, and we cultivated it over the months, you know, this way of collaborating with long pauses that I was doing. I was constantly working on the film, but also doing other stuff, and he was in other films, and it helped a lot to get the different angles and.
But the time in the material itself, that's a really interesting challenge. You know, I think any film that's filmed over 7 years, you know, obviously sometimes you want time to slow right down, so you savor every brick that's falling of the station, and other times, frankly, nothing was happening. I mean, you know, maybe a fox walked across but so the real time is slowing down or speeding up a lot during the course of the film, and that's why these camera tricks sort of feel appropriate. It's something that one senses in the material. But I don't. If your question is, did the passage of time change our perspective about what is important and what is not so important?
Yeah, the editing, the passage of time in terms of editing.
I think for editing, it's always good to have more time than just to have an intense phase of 2 or 3 months, because you're always then in a bubble, whatever the bubble is. And it always helps to open up this process. And I was always fighting against the process. I always wanted to cuff David, and now you come for 3 weeks and then we really can stay. And so, but it did not happen. So for this film, it saved us. But I think it's always good to have, even in shooting, I appreciate to have pauses. The whole film process for me is, because all this to shoot a film in 6 or 8 weeks and to edit it in 3 months, this is all production motivated. Yeah, it's not a creative mind that dictates to do it like that. So it's always better to do it in a more organic way. And I think every film needs its own process or schedule or whatever, also in editing, because usually editing in a basement for 3 months and everybody is going crazy. I don't think it's always the best.
When you talk about organic and also the way you were talking about editing before, to me it sounds like intuition is very important. The feeling that you develop for a scene or a sequence is important. Do you at the same time also like determine that this sequence stands for something that's important for the content, for what you want to say, and then this is a more intellectual process then, of course, you will go and shape this scene or this sequence to make it even stronger, supporting this, what you want to say, what you want to tell with it, or does this go against your feeling of organic editing? No,
I mean, there is one example. I don't remember, but I remember having the images of water or the story of Abdul, the crossing of the Mediterranean Sea. I had this story already in 14, and I was always attracted by this story, and I always looked of ways how we will narrate the story in the film. And while we had those floods of rain, and I even missed some of them, I always was having this in my background, you know, and of course, then when we edited it, then we did it, you know, we did the narration of this crossing the Mediterranean Sea by boat,
but
yeah.
That's the sort of discussion you evoke, Peter, is exactly the sort of conversation we would have had over our forlorn eggs. You know, the scene has suggested these are its best ingredients. Yes, but what does it mean? I think it means this. I think it means a bit more like that. Aha, but if it means that, then we should drop this one and swap that one round. And listen, again, it's just the 6 of us and the rest of the internet. A confession. Thomas talks about the trip across the Mediterranean. That shot, it's in the trailer as well, upside down, that's an edit trick. That's an edit effect. It's true. But it's because we discussed, well, what's it supposed to be? And Thomas was attracted by that shot because it evokes the idea of these mountains of water. And I said, but what if we do it like this, you know? And okay, it's manipulation after the event or whatever, but for the viewer, it's suddenly this scene becomes irresistible. You know, anybody who sees that shot feels the experience that is being described.
Exactly.
I'm happy that you explained this, because this was my next question about the reverse shot. So I already got my answer. Very nice.
But I mean, there may be a couple of other tiny little effects on the timeline, but
it's not an effect. It's upside down. You could even do it in the lab. You know, it's not.
Yeah, but you didn't.
Put it in the other direction.
So thank you very much. We're running out of time right now. I think there are many, there are some questions asked, and we have lots of answers to those, and also those questions who hadn't been asked but would have been asked. I'm really thankful for this wonderful jury. We had 3 wonderful talks, wonderful editors, and those 2 are definitely also 2 of them. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Thank you to the audience in the internet. And tomorrow we will have a masterclass with Carla Gutierrez, and the day after that we will, at the same time, we will have a panel discussion about the truth of the images. So, but first of all, thank you very much to Adobe for having those sessions and the DOK.edit Award, and thank you all for being in our jury, and thank you too for this wonderful discussion.